Hello and welcome to this mock interview that I am doing with Rishabh. Rishabh is a data scientist at Uber. Rishabh, really excited to host you here today.
Thanks for having me. Really excited and looking forward for the session.
Perfect. So we start with the mock interview now. So hey Rishabh, first of all, thanks for taking out the time to interview with us for the role of data scientist at Jovian. I've gone through your profile briefly, but to begin, I would love to learn a little bit about you. So can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Thanks very much for this opportunity to interview with Jovian. I'm really excited for that. And sure, let me give a brief introduction about myself. Hi, I am Rishabh. I hail from New Delhi. I did my schooling from New Delhi and then graduated from BITS Pilani. There is where I started to learn more about data and explore my career towards this in this direction. So the way I started, like the way I thought where my career should look like is towards financial modeling first, right? And hence I did a couple of projects. I did a couple of courses in data ML in my college, and then got a chance to intern in Goldman Sachs. So that was my first corporate experience as a 6 month internship where I did a lot of analytics work primarily, and like building products. How can we improve performances, optimize processes, those kind of things. And then fortunately I got a full-time opportunity after my internship there. So I worked there for 4 years in the data engineering role primarily. So it was a mix of engineering and analytics towards it. So a lot of ETL pipeline development, and somewhere some parts had how do we structure data so that it could be used in a manner which is helpful to solve business problems. So that's the role I occupied in Goldman Sachs. Primarily, the product I worked on was credit cards. So, like Goldman very recently released a card called Apple Card, which is a card in collaboration with Apple in the US market. So that was the product I was working on. Post that, I thought, okay, let me try something else in the data science field, purely into how we can use data mining and different techniques to work and draw insights from data and use them for making decisions. So hence, I joined like a completely tech-oriented organization, Uber. And every little decision that happens in Uber in terms of any business opportunity, sizing, scoping, that happens with the help of data. So I saw that opportunity for the next progression in my career, and hence I joined Uber as a data scientist too, which I'm working right now, and I'm really excited about the role that I'm occupying at Uber. So that's been my journey. If you want me to go in depth of projects, I can do that. So primarily, I've worked on machine learning algorithms, and then a little bit of data engineering side as well, building pipelines to source data from, store data, and then use it to draw insights from. So end-to-end pipelining, as well as like a couple of machine learning problems. So anything which you would like me to cover in depth.
Got it. Got it. And what was your major in college?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I missed that. So my major was chemical engineering. So yes, I am not a computer science graduate. I do not have a background in computing and like mathematics as well. All the things I learned was like in my free time or during courses which we took as electives, as well as doing projects during my time in Goldman Sachs. So that is where I like actually prepared it to transition into a pure data scientist role.
Got it. So what got you interested in data science in particular?
I like the business aspect of it. I was doing data engineering, right? So it was completely about how do I optimize my pipelines? How do I efficiently store data and add value to the organization in the form of technical ability? But I wanted to use that technical ability and correlate it directly with business decisions as well. So in data science, although it is very open-ended and there is no structure in terms of how what is my exact output of my model, but what I wanted to do is understand the business problem and see how I can add value using data. So that is where my direction I thought should be. And all I did the first half of the data pipeline, right? So I did all the like sourcing and storage part, but I wanted to understand the second half of the pipeline, which is more towards drawing insights out of it and using it, primarily building algorithms on top of it. So that is what my interest was, to like grow further in my career.
Got it. Um, well, I would love to maybe talk a little bit about one of your projects that you worked on, preferably in machine learning. So can you pick a project from your past experience and tell me where you had a significant work and impact.
Sure. So it's just been like around 5, 6 months in Uber. So let me take a project before that in Goldman Sachs. So, in a general setting, like of course, I'll not get into details of it, but generally speaking, what the project was about is how so of course the business context is that Goldman has a credit card. Now we need to figure out how, and like competitors of Goldman Sachs would also have their credit cards, right? JP Morgan would have one, Bank of America would have one, multiple in fact. So a consumer in US markets would have an option to choose a lot of credit cards, and they might have multiple credit cards at one time as well. So how do we figure out from their spending habits, from their past credit history, from their balances, etc., that our card is the first card that they reach out of in their wallet? So that's the most used card per customer. So that is where we built a model around it to get some ideas about whether our card is really appreciated in the market and is highly used, or how are we like doing, are we not doing that well, or is it not going to be used as much? So the data which I used was primarily regarding the credit data, which we get from different credit holders. Second thing was regarding the usage. So any kind of balances, utilization of the card, whether the user or the like consumer is paying their credit card bills on time, are they defaulting, are they even active on the platform? Like by active, I mean in the past 30 days, how many transactions have they? How many purchases have they made? Are they using our card in Apple stores, which is like our premium like bonus points? How many points have they got? So all those features we modeled. What is the last time of transaction? What was like the first time that the transaction happened? How much was the account? When was the account created? Those kind of things. And those were the kind of features we used to model like this kind of a problem. And like we used a couple of algorithms. I cannot name them because those are proprietary to the firm. And basically, like it was an ensemble model where like used a couple of different algorithms to get a final probability of whether our card is highly used or not. So probability was the final output of this problem. And using that, we thought we combined that score with another consumer satisfaction score called CSAT, and thought like, okay, combining these two scores, like in terms of weighted average or something, we got a number which is like a scorecard again, and said that, okay, can this tell us, are our consumers happy with their credit card or not? Will they use it at the top of their wallet or not? So those kind of things we figured out from that particular model. So that was the project that I did.
Got it. What was roughly the duration for which you were involved in the project, and what was your role specifically?
Sure. So the project would go from scoping. When I say scoping, I mean like, is this project going to be creating an impact in the firm's business, right? Why do we need this project? So all of those planning exercises started like around like the first month. In total, it took me 2 to 3 months in middle to finally release the product that we built. So the first like monthish was in the planning and how do we want to do it, like the whole architecture of the problem. And then the second month was towards building it and improving it. How can we like present what our product is towards internal stakeholders and get their feedback. Then like the testing part was there for around like 1.5 months. And finally we rolled out the product. And the rollout process was also in terms of experimentation kind of a thing. So the testing was still going on. So it's like quite, machine learning problems do take a lot of time. So that's how we structured. And my role was primarily like in a team of 3 people, end-to-end development of the whole thing.
Got it. Got it. All right. And once you rolled it out, did you also then make some future improvements to the model, or
Yeah, yeah, of course. So, like generally, the retraining period, I would say, as newer data comes in, would like stand anywhere between like 2 weeks to 6 weeks. That's how like we were growing as a business. So newer data would obviously, we need to be retrained in the model. So we did that from time to time.
got it? So for you personally, what was the most challenging part of this project?
Sure. So, like the most challenging part, I feel, because I was still like learning during that phase, was figuring out what algorithms would work best. and how can we combine like a couple of algorithms, like maybe do half a part with one algorithm, half a part with other algorithm using the output of the first algorithm. So that part was slightly tricky for me since I was still like on the path of learning. But like generally, when I talk about a data science problem, the most parts, the problems I've solved is before the model building, which is like sourcing of the data, like using it to form features. That is like the most important and critical part in a data problem. So that is where most of our emphasis was in this problem as well, because we spent like around 1.5 months to like do all of that.
Got it. Great. Well, sounds like a very interesting project, and I'm glad you were able to create a good model out of it. So, next thing that I want to touch on, that I want to talk about, is maybe I want to discuss a problem statement with you. A problem statement that we have here at Jovian, and something that you will be working on if you join us as a data scientist.
Mhm.
So on Jovian, we run several courses and programs and boot camps, and the people who take these programs, they build a project at the end of every course.
Mhm.
And every participant builds a unique project, and then they document that project in the form of a Jupyter notebook, which they then publish to their Jovian profile. So as a result, we have thousands of very interesting projects that people have created in the courses and programs they've taken. Now, what we want to do is when somebody logs into Jovian, instead of just showing them static information like a list of courses that we have, we want to show them a feed of some of the most interesting projects that are there. Maybe maybe slightly newer projects, maybe the most liked projects, maybe even projects that they might find most interesting based on the courses, based on the kind of tutorials that they have taken, or projects they have created.
Okay.
So I want you to design this feed, and I want you to maybe talk about how you would create the first version of the feed, and then how you would improve it over time.
Okay, absolutely. Cool. Sounds like from the like look of it, sounds like a feed where we are sort of recommending projects
Yes.
on a real-time basis as the person like logs in and refreshes their feed again and again, right?
Yes.
So let me ask a couple of clarifying questions, and how I would want to answer this is in the form of conversation, right? So I'll ask
Sure.
a lot of questions from you, and hopefully like we'll take it forward like that.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, like my first clarifying question would be that are we only looking at the projects, or are we also looking at like certain blogs or announcements maybe from Jovian? Let's say there's like a guest lecturer coming in, so that kind of announcement also featuring on top of that feed. Do we want those kind of elements also included, or only this is like a project kind of a recommendation?
Well, I would say to begin with, we might want to just do projects and have a different tab for announcements.
Got it. Cool. That simplifies the problem a little bit, because now we only have like one kind of a element to like rank and recommend on, right? So cool. How I would like to break this problem down, like how I would approach it is like first figure out the data part, like what could be my potential data points that I have or have not, and I'll discuss those with you. Then we'll see how we can use those data points to actually build an algorithm. And with an algorithm, I would like to discuss like a couple of approaches, like step one approach maybe, and then if it is too like basic, we'll go to a little more sophisticated approach, right? And finally, like I would like to see how do we want to like test, right? And before testing, I like before even like starting the algorithm part, I would like to lock down on the success metrics as well as the input metrics of like what I'm trying to do, how do I measure that, and what my success would look like which metric am I trying to move, right? So I would use like a certain methodology of experimentation on testing the algorithm. Finally, I would like talk about deployments and using and storing data on a real-time basis. So that is the four steps I would follow and break down this problem into. Any like, do you have any suggestions or feedback on my approach?
Fair enough. I think broadly, the approach sounds fair to me, and happy to get into specific areas depending on what
Okay,
you want to talk
absolutely.
about.
Let's dive deep. So even before getting to the data points, let me figure out like what are my input metrics and success metrics, right? So basically, how I would recommend is using data from either projects or users, and combine both of these and like form like a ranking based algorithm which would rank projects from 1 to maybe like 500 or however many, and in that order it will be showed in the feed for the user, and this would be done in a personalized manner for each user, right? My success metric would be how the user is engaging with that feed, It may be, let's say, the first project I am showing in the feed, the user doesn't really like that, but they go straight to second or third project and they click on that, they like it and they comment on it, or they like click on it and go through it. So the session time, basically session time is a variable, I would say. How much time do they spend on that project which comes on their feed, right? So first thing, like, so in this case, my first project did not actually get a lot of traction, so hence there is scope for improvement in my recommendation engine. So there are a couple of metrics I would use. So first is likes, of course. Second is the session length of how long is the project open for a user. Third would be the review, how many reviews the user has given on any of the projects. How much is he engaging with the project? And fourth could be like commenting on it, or like, let's say, what is the click through rate? So click through rate is another metric which we use. How in terms of like total projects we are listing there, how many projects is the user clicking in the top 10 maybe, or in the top 15 which comes onto the feed. So that is how I would like do my success metrics. So like, do you agree with my success
Got it.
metrics?
Yeah, I think that sounds fair to me. Um, if you are starting out, which metric would you focus on first?
Cool. A great question. So first of all, I would like CTR would be my first metric, because if the user doesn't even click like the project, session would not begin, and if they don't go through it, likes and comments would come only later, right? So CTR is my primary metric, primary success metric, which I'm be looking at, right? One more thing, my guardrail metric. So guardrail metric is one more thing which we look at, because guardrail is my driver and my primary metrics. Apart from that, I would look at load time maybe of the feed. So I don't want to personalize to an extent where it is taking like half an hour to load the feed. So that would be my guardrail metric, right?
Right.
That is how I would envision this whole problem and break down into metrics, right? Now, jumping into the data part of it, I would like to have features of projects and users, as I told. So for project, I would like to have like what topic the project is, what course the project is, what was the technologies used in the project, who did it, and then who did means user ID, which I'll join with the user data later on. And then what was the experience of the person doing it? Is he like so and then like when was it done? How much time like did this project go on for? Those kind of things which help me identify whether this project is done by like a novice who is in data science, or like an expert, because there could be like different kinds of like tiers of students who are doing this project, right? Second part is the user data would again be related to like how many courses the person has been enrolled into, what has been the tenure of the course, is he just starting his course, is he like towards the finishing end of his course, what is the average session length of that user on the platform, like is he really studying, or maybe he's just coming to like do the project and go back. So yeah, I mean, those kind of details will really help me identify like user profiles, and which will later help me in recommendation.
Okay, so there is one challenge here. A lot of times, people, when they build a project, they do not necessarily specify any topics as such. They write a lot of documentation. So you have a lot of description within your markdown, essentially within the Jupyter notebook.
Mhm.
So how will you deal with that?
Sure. So there are two ways which comes to my mind. One is like a topic modeling kind of a thing, which is like again like not as easy as like just getting a feature and framing it. Topic modeling is one thing. Second thing is using NLP based techniques to get like a word space of what kinds of words is used there, and using those as inputs, like get an idea of what kind of project it was. So that is also like a little like manipulation or cleaning, I would say, as part of the whole project I would like to do. So
Right.
two different techniques which are really like helpful in getting like chart based or like content based things, text based things, right? So that's my input.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's the inputs, and we also have information like likes that projects have
Of
already
course.
received
So
and things
those
like
would
that.
be like all the project related metrics, like
Yeah.
already how many views has the project really like got, likes, comments, reviews, ratings. So like since we are building a feed, all the projects would have all these attributes,
Yeah.
and definitely we would use that.
Alright.
Cool.
So once you have these features, how will you actually go about building that first
Exactly.
model?
That's the second step to it, algorithm building. So, recommender systems generally are of two types. Majorly, there can be one third type. So, I'll discuss the third type, which is like based on popularity. So what I can do is, and it's like a hacky way of doing it, we can rate the projects in terms of likes or comments. The most like liked projects, like top 10, we can create a list and showcase those or some of those as part of the feed directly. So that's my popularity based recommendation. So there is no need of any ML, AI, or like fancy terms to be done. It's like a very simple, basic recommendation engine. So there's where we can start off with.
Yeah.
Second thing, as I was telling, is like two major things. One is a content-based recommendation system. Second is collaborative filtering. I'll explain a little bit both of these, and then we can probably do like a simple version which is content, and like a hybrid version which is a mix of content and collaborative filtering, right? So, content based means I do not need any user data per se. Like product 2 has features which are sort of similar to product one's features. So I would show product 2 as the next recommendation for the user. That is exactly what how content based filtering works. So let's say if a user is focusing on a project which is in let's say a linear regression, I would show him project 2 also, which is done by someone else, which is in the linear regression category. So that is how my like content based like recommendation would work.
All right.
Cool. Second part is the collaborative filtering, which is little more complicated. So here is where like the actual applications of AI, deep learning, and like statistical concepts like matrix factorization would come into the picture. So basically, what happens in collaborative filtering is we build user personas. So let's say if user one is like user two, all the projects which user 2 would like would also be recommended to user 1. So that is how this collaborative filtering works.
Okay.
So here is where I would need my user features as well. So let's say where my output would look like is how what are the users, what are the products they're liking, and basically based on that, how can I form a like a matrix which would have highest probability of a user liking P1 or P2 or P3 or and there can be two ways I do this. One way is that like there are certain projects which have gotten like likes from similar kind of users, so I show that project to similar those kind of users, right? Now other way is there are certain users who are liking certain different types of projects. So one is item based, basically one is the user based. So these two approaches. And finally, how like we can use like a deep learning application into this is how I envision this is similar to YouTube. How YouTube works is they use some algorithm called as like a Google Brains, which is nothing but there are maybe like 5 billion videos to recommend someone. They would filter out top 500 out of that using like some kind of a neural network system. Or like we can not even use neural network for it. We can use like a rule-based engine, right? A rule-based engine would feel like, okay, show me all the projects which are linear regression, which have got more than 100 likes, which have got more than 10 likes, which the users have spent more than 2 hours working on, and the user experience is greater than 5 years. So that could be one of my rule which filters out like my top 500 projects, those kind of things. That is as simple as that. Second thing is we can build like a model on top of it,
Right.
maybe like a probabilistic model, like a logistic regression, and give probabilities to all the projects, and take like the like ones who are nearer to the one category, and build like a 500 base of recommendation. So now what I have is I have all the users, and against each user I have top 500 projects based on the algorithm that I chose. It could be either rule based, it could be regression based, it could be neural network based.
Fair.
Now is my real personalization kind of a thing which will pitch in. Out of those 500, I want a very sophisticated neural network, maybe like an RNA or RNN or something else, LSTM, to actually do the exercise in certain way that out of those 500 I rank them in a order, let's say 1 to 500, and I show those projects in 1 to 500 way to each user. So here I would specifically want to use neural networks because those like are really like sophisticated and complicated, and they would give really nice results. But
Okay.
before that I would use like various smaller or like less compute friendly algorithms to actually come to this point. That is how I envision this in my mind. And one last thing is, after I am like done with all of this, and like this is sort of how like YouTube also does. So I'm like stealing that idea from there. Cool. And once this is done, we go on to the testing part. So, yep, any questions?
Yeah. So in terms of the three algorithms that you or the three approaches that you talked about, the first is just like a rule-based approach. The second is the relevance approach, and then the third is the collaborative filtering approach. Um, at what stages will you roll out each of these? In what order, and how will you blend them if you are going to blend them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, how I think about it is for collaborative filtering, I need user data, right? Now, let's say if a new user joins into Jovian, right, they would not have done any projects, they would not have a lot of data associated with it. So, here is where my algorithm will not perform well. So here is where I would pick something like a content-based algorithm. So let's say if the user is showing interests in one kind of a project, maybe again an example of linear regression, I would show them all the linear regression-based notebooks which have like really high likes or high ratings.
Right.
That is how I would start my recommendation thing. And once we get more data from the users, and like after each recommendation as well, we will get more likes and comments and views, right? So even that data will help retrain and make our model little more precise to what it wants to do actually. So there is where I would use like a hybrid approach of using like content based and collaborative filtering based as well.
Fair, fair enough. Now, I don't necessarily want to talk fully about the deployment because that will possibly be handled by a different team. But what I would want to understand from you is how exactly are you going to improve this over time?
Yeah, so improvement would be like mostly related to how I can like how my performance of each of the algorithms is going to be, right? So certain metrics offline and online, of course, offline metrics would be like the model based metrics, which are like area under the curve. If I'm using like ranking based or classification based things, I would use like a AOC kind of a metric. Other thing could be like squared errors or something like that, right? What my online metrics is basically the metric success metrics I talked about, like my CTR, my likes, my comments. Those I would like to test using A/B testing. So how I would do this is I would build, let's say, model one, which is like my version one, and then my version two, right? So those two versions, I would work on half 50-50 control and treatment groups, which are my users. And then I would try to see whether which model is performing better, which is not performing better in terms of my measurement of the success metrics. If my CTR is higher in B set, which is the treatment set, then C set in a more like statistically significant manner, I would say my version 2 is performing better than version 1. So that is how I can also test between version 1 and version 2, which is like complete, like not completely, but like slightly improved algorithms here and there.
Fair
That is how
enough.
I'll improve my model
Fair
overall.
enough. Yeah, I think that's a fair approach. The last question I have is you're building all these models and you're building like as the data gets larger, you get into neural networks and all. How will you make sure that you are showing the feed quickly to users?
Yeah, that's actually like a really high challenge because neural networks are compute heavy, and since this is like a real time kind of a thing, we would want to use like a proper high like API approach maybe, or like storage in such a manner that we store those results, and like there is where my messages go out like in the form of either like streaming, Spark streaming, or like a Kafka messages that go out like straight away and show those results immediately onto the screen. So yeah, that is like going to be like a little challenging part, but I guess like of course with it available technology in the market, we can do that.
Got it. All right. Well, I am pretty satisfied with the solution largely. In fact, I'm going to steal that and start implementing it. But thanks for answering that. I think that answers all the questions that I had to ask you. Do you have any questions for me?
For sure. So, like, of course, this is like a role where, like you are, of course, like offering me, but I also want to be a good fit to the role. So, I want to know more about the role in terms of what is your vision of a data science team at Jovian? How will you implement a team so that the whole process is data centric and uses data like efficiently?
Right. So at Jovian at the moment we don't really have like a data science team. We do look at the data ourselves internally, and often we do some analysis, visualization to make some decisions in terms of where we want to go. But we are getting to the point and the scale where we want to put in some intelligent features into the platform itself. So one is the feed that I talked about, helping people discover interesting projects. The second is we have a bunch of assessments on the platform, and depending on how people are doing on assessments, we want to recommend them to revise certain courses, certain lessons. So that is again something that we want to build out. And I understand that not all of these would be machine learning related, but I think at some point machine learning AI is going to come in. But one very interesting challenge that I am thinking about in the long term, and I would love to get very briefly your thoughts on that as well, is to build use some of the more modern language models or APIs to create a assistant or a buddy bot that can study everything that you're doing and give you inputs or even help you clarify doubts, help you with homework, help you with projects. So I would love to get some thoughts on that. How would you approach something like that?
I'll probably steal ChatGPT. But yeah, like to be serious, yes, like there are a lot of AI based things that have already done that. I would try to incorporate, bring, and all of those are open source. So I'll try to incorporate that first, like by going through the documentation and see where can I like bring, like add value to like the whole ecosystem that we have here in terms of tech stack. So that is how I would approach.
Cool. Any other questions you have for me?
No, I'm good for now.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we will close the mock interview at this point. So I would first just love to get a quick reaction. We had a good long 40 or 50, 35-minute mock interview. Any reactions? Did you find it useful? Did you enjoy it? Great. Yeah, I think universally there's been a very positive response. So what we'll do is before we start talking a little bit about interview tips, maybe I just want to share my quick thoughts on the interview. I think Rishabh gave a good example of how you go about approaching the interview. The first thing which I tell a lot of people is about keeping it conversational. And that's it's not necessarily a monologue that you are constantly talking, and it's not an exam where you're just asked a question and you have to give the correct answer. But what are your thoughts on that, Rishabh?
No, absolutely. So you have to keep the conversation going. It is not just a test of your skills, it is also a test of your communication skills, as well as how easily you will gel into the team. So they are trying to find the best fit, not just in terms of technical skills, but overall fit. So if you engage the interviewer, it'll like help him be in like listening to your solutions and like deep dive into what you're trying to explain. So that really helps.
Great. And then one other thing that I really appreciated was when we were talking about your previous experience, you mentioned you specifically picked out an interesting problem that would be relevant to the role at Jovian, for example. And I think this is something that I've seen people struggle with if they have 3-4 years of experience. They cannot choose what is the right thing. So, what any tips there? Any thoughts there?
No, absolutely. Like you need to do your background research for sure. Like you have to sit and read the job description. You need to sit and study what the role is all about, what the company is all about, and you need to know like certain projects that the company does. And there is where you can add value, and you need to show that you can add value from the interview rounds, not just when you join. So that is the most important thing. A company will only offer you a job when you actually like are adding value and you show that. So first of all, you should know things. That is the baseline. Of course, your basics should be really strong. Second thing is you need to also show that you can really add value. One in terms of communication. Second in terms of expressing your ideas in a very articulate manner. So if your answer, like not the technical one, but the starting answers are going beyond, let's say 2 to 3 minutes, might as well just summarize them in the last with taking 10 seconds out so that it sticks in your interviewer's brain.
Right.
So that's how I would.
Great. One other thing when in the interview that I found really interesting, because this is again a mistake or sort of a issue that I see often when I'm talking to a lot of people, is when we talked about the technical problem and it was clear that it is a recommendation problem, you did not immediately say we'll use collaborative filtering. In fact, you first just talked about what the overall project will look like, what are going to be our success metrics, what's going to be the data, and the first solution you suggested was not even a machine learning solution, which to a lot of people watching may feel counterintuitive that I want to go and do machine learning. But actually, in most cases, you should start with a non-ML solution. And maybe I just want to understand, like, what is your thought process there?
No, so ML cannot do anything if it does not solve a business problem. So the aim of a data scientist is to add value in terms of business improvements. So if a solution can be done in a way that it is adding value, why, like, ML is a kind of an improvement on top of it, right? So, and of course ML sometimes does not give us a deterministic result. So we cannot say for sure that okay, today my ML model is working, 6 months later that ML model will give the same result, which is like improvement in my business. So it's a tricky job, right? That's the like drawback, or let's say like the harsh side of the data scientist role.
Yeah.
So you need to be very careful that what your priorities are is to help your product teams, help your business stakeholders to do better. And it could be using ML, it could not be using ML. So like technology is growing, of course, you need to bring in new ideas. But if something can be done at the bare level, you are saving a lot of your time and investment by doing like a huge thing which might fail in the end.
Right.
So that's the mindset I carry at least.
Great. Fair. So, any questions you have for Rishabh, please drop them in the chat as well. We'll try to cover some. But now, maybe I just want to take a step back and just talk about some general interview advice that you would like to share. Since a lot of people here have not really taken a data science interview, they may have built projects.
Yeah, I figured that like a lot of people are like from college background and they really want to get their first job. So how I would want to do this is like start off with college, right? So your like third and fourth year should be mostly towards trying to get your basics right, both in statistics as well as like in terms of learning basic algorithms. Like you can start off with linear regression, decision trees, all the basic algorithms cover those. And this is like machine learning, right? And then post that you can primarily like practice a lot of those algorithms, or even before that, like just understand the math behind it, understand how can we do better, right? Cool. And there is where you can upskill on a yearly basis. So like step two would be to go to neural network. Step three maybe to like do further reinforcement learning, maybe much more after that, because research is taking this field in a like different direction. So start from basics, get your basics sorted, get a job. It could be a data analyst job. Data analyst jobs are really on the rise and they really set a really good base of analytics, which is like the core of like data science, I would say. And then we can slowly move from like there to other roles, like as per your interest. So yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
my like first advice. And second thing is like start with SQL. SQL is the most important aspect. Then like Python or any other programming language, and then like all the algorithms will come later. If you're not good in like basic fetching of data, because most often they're not, data scientists fetch their own data. They are not given like a clean data to work on. So get your basics right.
So you are hearing it from a data scientist that you shouldn't just directly try to learn deep learning and NLP directly. Please learn SQL, please learn Python, please learn how data wrangling, how to clean data. All of that is so important, right? Can you talk a little bit about what kind of projects you would recommend people to build over while they are trying for their first data science job?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very important question, because what I've seen a lot of students do is just practice algorithms. Like they'll pick a Kaggle dataset, they'll just put linear regression on top of it, and they'll just post it. So that sort of things would have been useful like maybe 5 years back. But now most companies would want to see end-to-end solution. So pick up like a problem, source the data on your own. It could be through an API, could be through like a non-structured file, like any JSON maybe, or any XML. Clean that data, put that into like a data frame, like do some EDA on top of it, do like figure out what is your problem statement that you're trying to do it more as how it is done in the real world, rather than just doing it like on top of Kaggle, or like just like doing a algorithm practice. So once you do that EDA, you put your like ML on top of it, then ending is also important in terms of how you test it, what were the learnings out of it, and then what in the end, how do we deploy it. So end to end solution is one project, that is not like five different projects. So that is where I would like want to focus people to go on.
Fair enough. Um,
So I have a question here. What kind of project on my resume shows the interview that I have good knowledge of SQL? So in terms of projects, there's very little scope for showcasing good SQL skills, but most often than not, every data scientist role would have a one full-fledged round of SQL. So you need to practice. So in your resume, you would showcase what kind of skills or projects that you have made. Like, are you even like clear with your basics? That is the kind of projects you need to showcase on your resume. This is for the entry level, like people who are 3 4 experience 3 4 years of experience. That is a separate ball game. I'm just talking about getting your first job here. Then the first round itself would be your SQL round. So there is where all the practice that you have done on different platforms like Lead Code, HackerRank would be useful.
Great. Maybe we can take a look at a few other questions. Yeah, this is a question that I think we get every event, but I would also just love to get your thoughts about layoffs and recession and are tech jobs going to end? What's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my view is like this is something which you cannot do. It's like a common view, of course. But how I feel about like this is if you are getting to a point where you are gaining one skill every year, even if you're laid off, you're going to get a job.
Right.
So, job security is not just having a job security is having that kind of a skill set
Right.
where even if you're laid off, go on a vacation for a week or so, get your head straight, then use the skills that you have built in your job or outside of your job to get a new job. That is what job security according to me is. So yeah, I mean that's my advice on that.
Yeah, that's a good answer because you hear all these news articles, you see all these news articles about layoffs, but what they don't tell you is that most of these people are actually getting hired within the next week, couple of weeks or so, because there's so many other companies waiting to now hire people. So don't worry too much about layoffs. Yes, hiring has slowed down. Yes, a lot of companies may not be hiring as much as they were last year, but there are always opportunities as you're learning and growing. Okay, let's take a few more questions here. Okay, maybe we can touch on the a day in the life very briefly. What does one day at work look like for you?
Sure. So first of all, there are multiple projects running at the same time. That's the beauty of it and the challenge of it, both good and bad. So like, the multiple challenge I'm saying is like there could be like some kind of an analysis or a deep dive I need to do. Let's say if I'm doing like I'm owning a metric, like let's say customer satisfaction score. Why did it drop? Why did it improve suddenly? Those kind of deep dives. What was the root cause of it? That is one part of the job. Second part is doing experimentation as to if we are rolling out a product, will it actually help our business? Which will it actually make an impact? And the third part is, of course, building a full-fledged machine learning model. So my job is like divided into these three segments. Primarily, it is the first two parts because third part needs a lot of investment, both of time and of let's say skills and money. So like we do it in such a way that we want to add value to the business and not just going and implementing neural networks day after day. So that is not my day how it is.
Okay. Here's a good question. I think, do we need to focus on tools of scale at the beginning, or what tools should you focus on initially?
So to get your first data science job, the tools that you should be very clear is your SQL, like first thing, basic programming language. Like you should be able to solve maybe easy to intermediate level of data structures problems, right? And your data manipulation skills, your like visualization skills, and your statistics and mathematics. That is the only thing that you need to get your first data science job, along with a few projects, of course, to showcase that you have these skills.
And one thing I just want to revisit is a lot of people ask, I'm not from a computer science background, I'm not from a data science, I don't have a data science degree, I don't have a master's. Can I become a data scientist? And I always tell them yes, but it would be great to hear from you what advice you would have for somebody who doesn't have that, or should they even be worried about that in the first place?
I mean, it makes it maybe like 1% difficult to get a job, but it is not impossible for sure. There are a lot of examples. What you need to do is like potentially get your skills right and then apply for a job. It's just about getting your first job in the right domain, right? So let's say if you are getting a data scientist job, it might not be as well paying as you might expect it to be, but it still gives you that experience and that branding that you can work as a data scientist around. And then you can go ahead and like switch maybe, or if you're not interested in the role that you've got. So that is how I would envision it. Do your projects, build your skills, and of course, you need to get your priorities straight because that is the most difficult part of it. Prioritizing your time to doing your coursework along with doing additional projects.
Yeah.
That's the most challenging part of it. I totally understand it, but if you have to do it, you have to do it.
Right. Great. Um, I think there's a question about the interview process. So we'll take maybe two or three more questions and then we'll wrap up. We're coming up on time. But the question is, how many rounds are there in the interview process and what are those? What does that life cycle look like?
It depends from company to company. I have interviewed for companies who have just taken 4 rounds, and I have interviewed for Uber who has taken 8 rounds. So
Wow.
it just depends on how much scrutiny is the role in terms of how much expectations of the like role is from like company to company. So let's say if you go to maybe a Google, they would take 6 7 rounds. You and like what's the urgency of hiring as well? That also depends. So it's not just a fit framework, but also if someone like maybe like a startup who needs a data scientist, maybe he needed a data scientist yesterday, so that might just takes like 3 or 4 rounds, and then like if they feel that you have the potential, then they can train and like hire you. So that is how like the market works.
8 rounds. Yeah, 8 rounds is huge. Um, all right. Well, I think we've largely covered most questions here. I'm taking a look. If there's anything else that we can touch on. Hmm. Okay, I think we've largely covered most of the questions here. So there's a question here like, was this interview for a junior data scientist role? No, in this case, this would be a data scientist two or a senior data scientist kind of role because Rishabh is coming in with some experience. But for a junior data scientist role, also you can expect it to be somewhat similar, but probably more on just your basic understanding of the skills. Maybe we may not have gone that deep into the design of the recommendation system. We would
Yeah.
have touched on sort of the outline. What is
Yeah.
your
So yeah, for a junior data scientist role, the interviews would look like they would be given a business problem exactly like this, but it might not include a lot of recommendation style things. They might just be okay. I have to improve my customer satisfaction. How do I approach this problem? It could be more open ended because they want to see your problem solving skills, not just your like data science skills.
Got it? Okay. I think we have covered everything here, so we'll probably close at this point. Well, I want to maybe ask you last couple of questions, and try to ask this to every speaker. One is, since we are a learning platform, we like to understand when you were learning data science, what were some of your favorite resources?
Sure. So, like, I did my data science learning mostly like through the courses, either like online or maybe like a self kind of a thing, self-read data scientist kind of a thing. So, one thing is I would like to say a lot of blogs which are there on Medium really helped me.
Right.
So, I'm not a big fan of reading big books. So, like that's just personal to me. So, I just read blogs and figure out stuff from there. And other things is like whatever, like there are a couple of famous courses. One is one resource I would recommend is for your statistics. There's a channel called StatQuest.
Oh yeah, love that
So
channel.
really nice channel. You can go and get your basics from there. Andrew Ng's machine learning and deep learning are really nice courses.
Yeah.
They're like slightly advanced, but like once you're done with your basics, you can like go there and check them out.
Yep.
And mostly there are blogs for each and every algorithm out there. So if you're practicing something out of Kaggle, you can use any of the blogs to get direction on. So that was my approach. And yeah, everything which you're learning outside, try to link and sort of add value in your current role. So let's say if I'm doing data engineering role and if I want to move to data scientist role, how can I bring what I'm learning outside of my job to add value of it? That is really helpful to get your final like end of the journey kind of a
Right.
thing.
So that's a great tip. In many organizations, if you've learned even a little bit of data analysis or even SQL, you can go talk to a different team or talk to your manager and try to get a project. In fact, that is how a lot of people who've been part of our bootcamp have actually made transitions within first and then probably finding some opportunity outside. Then the last question I want to ask you is, there's AI, machine learning, Deep learning is all the hype today. But what do you see as the future, and what are you most excited about personally?
I am most excited about is the changes that are happening, right? And finally, like big tech companies have started to come up with their own bots and
Yeah.
how those bots could be linked to searches now. Like Microsoft is doing ChatGPT plus Bing. Google would be coming up with their own product. So, like the pace at which these research moves is really exciting to me, and how we can use that research in our daily work. That is how, like, where the human brain would be useful, right? Applications of a technology is where a data scientist should play.
Yeah.
It's, of course, building the algorithm is like something which is like really advanced, and PhD people would be doing that. Of course, you're interested, go ahead, do a PhD, do that role. But my role is how do I implement that solution to solve a business problem? So
Right.
that is what I am interested
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rishabh, for volunteering to do this mock interview. Everyone had a great time. Thank you all for joining. I'll see you next time.